everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Untold Truth. This is the podcast where we literally punch racism in the face. And tonight we have one of the heaviest punches in the world coming out to speak to us. And we are so excited about this one. We cannot wait to jump into it. And just before we do, we have to tell you that we have none other than the world proclaimed international phenomenal Jane Elliott, who is an international known teacher, lecturer, diversity trainer from the United States, and recipient of the National Mental Health Association Award for Excellence in Education, and who exposes prejudice and bigotry for what it is, an irrational class system based upon purely arbitrary facts. In response to the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968, Jane Elliott devised the controversial and startling blue eyes, brown eyes exercise. This is now a famous exercise, labels participants as inferior or superior based solely upon the color of their eyes and exposes them to the experience of being a minority. Miss Jane Elliott, welcome to a podcast being recorded in South Africa. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing just fine, and I'm absolutely astounded and highly complimented and honored by your calling me. I really, really think this is wonderful. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, and probably I said it before, but you probably in the top five of the most amazing people we have spoken to on this podcast, and so we hope to continue from this on moving forward. We don't have a lot of time, and we want to extract as much information as we can from you. First off, Jane Elliott. Who is Jane Elliott, and how did she become to be?
Oh, well, I came to be because my father said you don't judge a book by its cover or a person by their skin. And then 20 minutes later, he'd say, and don't bring any black children into my house, any pickaninnies into my house of grandchildren. So there I was. Here was this man who was totally moral and not racist, but racist because of the way he talked and acted and behaved. I knew he was a racist. I was shocked. I was upset. And he said to us, don't bring anybody in who wasn't white. Well, my daughter married a Saudi Arabian, and I took my Saudi Arabian grandchild over and put her in my father's arms. And he was about 80 years old, 70 years old at the time. And he looked at that child and he looked at those parents and he said, this is the most beautiful child I've ever seen. And then he looked at that young Saudi Arabian male and that American female, and he said, that's a good cross. My father was a farmer. He raised hogs and cattle and sheep, and he said, that's a good cross. And at that moment, you could not say, after that, ever say a racist remark around him, because he'd say, you know what you're thinking? You know what you're doing? You expect me to agree with that? He turned into somebody who was absolutely, totally opposed to racism. It took a long time. I showed him and my mother the first film that was made of my third graders going through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. The second year I did it. And after it was over, he stood up and he took his red handkerchief out of the back pocket of his blue bib overalls, blew his nose, wiped his eyes, and said, I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old. And he was about 60 years old at that time. And for the first time in his life, he heard somebody say, race is a lie. It's time to get over the idea of several different races. There's only one. It was good for him. It was good for me. And it was good for my kids to be raised around that man.
And so that is definitely a good start to it. I would always want to know, do you think it was you making a conscious decision to follow your path down that road, or do you feel it's like a calling on your life? Because this is not an easy job to do, and I don't know if anybody would willingly choose this path.
I didn't choose it. It was forced on me. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. I was teaching the day after he was killed, I was teaching third grade in all white, all Christian Riceville, Iowa. And we were studying the Indian unit. We had made a teepee the previous year. I was taking it home. I was going to wash it, iron it, and we were going to put it in the classroom the next day. I walked up to my house. The telephone was ringing. I walked in, answered the telephone with my sister. She said, is your television on? I said, no. She said, you better turn it on. I said, why? She said, they shot him. I said, who'd we shoot this time? Because we were in a killing mood. She said Martin Luther King Jr. And when I say that, I get a visceral reaction to it because for just a moment, my world stops spinning. And you can't make up this reaction. It's just awful. Every time I think about that moment, I get sick to my stomach because Martin Luther King Jr. had been one of our heroes of the month in February, and he was dead at the hands of an assassin who was obviously put in place by the government of the United States. I knew. I thought, oh my God, what have we done? So I washed and dried the teepee. I fed the kids. I put them to bed, and I sat in. As I was ironing the teepee on the floor of the living room, and the television was on. And Walter Cronkite said to three black leaders, when our president was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line? I thought, my God, those are my people. How dare he say that? So I changed the channel. And there was another one of those men saying to two leaders of the black community, don't you Negroes think you should feel sympathy for us white people because we can't feel the anger at this killing that you Negroes can? And at that point, I wrapped up the teepee. I threw it into the closet in the bedroom. I got my husband's supper ready, and he came in. He hugged me. He said, they killed him, didn't they? I said, yes, they did. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to teach my students about racism tomorrow. I'm going to teach my students in such a way that they will never say the kinds of things that Walter Cronkite and that other man did tonight. He said, Jane, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to separate my kids according to the color of their eyes, just like Hitler did. One of the ways they decided who went into the gas chamber during the Holocaust was eye color. If you had a good German name, but you had brown eyes, they thought you must be a Jewish person who was trying to pass. And if you were a child, they threw you up in the air and used you for target practice. And if you were an adult, they put you in a work camp. He said, you can't do that. You'll lose your job. I said, if I lose my job for doing the right thing, I don't want to teach her. He said, well, you won't. You better not do that. So I went to bed, said the only prayer I ever say anymore, oh Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Oh Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. And like half an hour after I'd started the exercise the next morning, I wished that prayer hadn't been answered because I learned more in the first 15 minutes of treating my white children who had blue eyes as the Germans had treated the Jews, but without any physical, there's no blows, no abuse, no physical abuse, but mental and emotional abuse by accusing them of not being intelligent because they had the wrong color eyes. And I saw what happened to those kids after half an hour of that. And I thought, my God, what if this happened to you every day of your life as long as you live in the United States of America? And I realized that what my blue-eyed third graders were going through at that moment is what people of color, children of color, go through in the United States every single day. And they have to die to get over it.
Wow.
I learned more than I wanted to know.
Yeah. And I think we all appreciate that you had that moment of using that example because it taught so much to most of us as well. So it wasn't just for you; a lot of us learned through that as well. And I when you normally do that, and I've seen a few of the clips where you've done that, where it links to you having the visceral experience to the death of Martin Luther King Jr. and the when you do the blue eyes, brown eyes experiment, you sometimes, or probably most of the times when you have done it, you say to white people, if you wish to change places with black people, please stand. And that is normally such an impactful moment for me because none of them stand. So, in your opinion, do you think that white people the world over act dumb about racism and the benefits that they enjoy from racism that helps them to play dumb? Because that when you do that, they all know what you refer to and they don't get up.
Yeah, nobody stands, and they look sideways at each other to see whether anyone is standing, and nobody stands because in that moment they have admitted that they know it's happening, they know it's ugly, and they know they don't want it to happen to them. Now, are white people ignorant about this? No. And are white people doing this just because it's real? No, it isn't real. Racism didn't begin until the Spanish Inquisition. Oh, this whole thing started in the 1500s when a man named Torquemada decided that he was going to turn all Christians into Catholics. Well, he killed a whole, and he was going to kill those who weren't Christians. He killed a whole bunch of people, almost 2,000, before somebody said to him, you know, a lot of the people who were just killed were Christians. Then he realized you can't tell what a person's religion is by looking at them. So he had to find a way to decide who deserved to live and who deserved to die. And he set upon skin color. He called the lighter brown people, we were all brown. They were all brown. We are all brown. He called the lighter brown people white because white is the color of goodness and purity. He called the darker skinned people black because black is the color of savagery and evil. And at that moment, he set us into a situation where we are at polar opposites. As long as we use the words black and white to describe people, which does not describe anyone. You're not black and I'm not white. You and I are both shades of brown, and so is everybody else on the face of the earth. So, and statistically, it makes no sense. Only 15 to 18% of the human population of the earth is classified as white. And we are white. It's something that we have used to make money. The reason racism persists is because it's an extremely profitable enterprise. If you can put bad housing and put people in that housing and charge them rent for that housing, which is substandard, if you can create schools in which you hire the less important, the less intellectually gifted people to teach, if you can put those schools and those homes out just on the other side of the freeway, if you can assign teachers who will agree to go along with teaching the lie of racism, you can make a lot of money. You can, and then if you can create laws, and if you haven't read the book The Color of Law, you better get it and read it. But if you can create laws that make people who are other than what we call white more guilty of any crime than those who commit the crime if they're white, you can create a situation in which you have in every state several prisons in which you can put people who have broken the law, and then you can pay them nothing and send your products in to be created and manufactured in those prisons at less money than it would cost you if you had a manufacturing outfit outside the prison. Racism is an extremely profitable venture. It has been profitable in your country, and it has been extremely profitable in mine. And as long as my country is being run by the members of the Business Roundtable, who are the millionaires and billionaires in this country, that's how long we'll have racism. Did I answer your question at all?
You did. You definitely did, and you added. I think as it would have been come to known, Jane Elliott don't stop at that. She'll answer all your questions in one go, and then you have to make up some more. So you definitely answered my question. I think you touched on capitalism, which is the second cousin to racism, and the two always go together. And as you rightly say, it's very lucrative for white people to maintain the racist status quo.
Wait. You've got to stop using the word white. If you're going to talk to me, stop using the word white to describe people, because we aren't. We are melanemic. If you don't have enough iron in your body to keep you healthy, you are anemic. If you don't have enough melanin in your skin to keep you healthy, you're melanemic. If you have more melanin, you're melanaceous, which rhymes with gracious and spacious and efficacious. If you have a lot of melanin, you're melanotic. And melanotic and melanemic are in the dictionary. Before I die, melanemic, melanaceous will be in the dictionary. We've got to stop using white and black. Don't ask me about white people. I don't know any white people. I know people who are different shades of brown. I know people who are really pale shades of brown who seem to think that Jesus was a person who looked like them. We lie in churches all over the United States every day. We have pictures of the person that you are willing to kneel to, and he looks like a white man, a so-called white man. He wasn't. He had a kinky woolly hair and feet of bronze. He was an Ethiopian Jew. We've got to start. You want to talk about the truth? Let's talk about the truth. And let's stop using the word white to describe people. Okay. Try melanemic on. You can pronounce this melanemic. Melanemic. Go for
I got it. Yeah.
There you got it. Good for you.
So a lot of melanemic people have this idea that racism in the USA and racism in South Africa is very different. So when you speak to melanemic people in either side, they claim that theirs are different and it's not as violent and as oppressive as the other. Do you have any opinion about that?
I think racism in any place is violent. You don't, people don't call it violent when some melanemic teacher sees a little boy come into her classroom and says, "Oh, here's another little black boy." Now, they don't consider that violence, but that is violence because that is misnaming that child, and that is setting that child into a situation where he is going to be judged by the color of his skin as long as he has that teacher. And he is going to hear her remarking about him in the hallway when she talks to the other teachers. So it isn't violence, but it is unkindness, and teachers who say those kinds of things should be garbage collectors instead of education dispensers. We will have these problems as long as we allow people to make racist statements in our presence. As long as we teach the lie, we will have these problems. As long as we teach that Columbus discovered America, and we're expected to believe that, when in fact, people from Africa came to this country that we call America 15,000 years before Columbus was a gleam in his father's eye. Now, it's time for us to start teaching that those first people that colonized this country, the United States of America, came from, probably some of them came from South Africa. They certainly came from Africa. We've got to start teaching the truth. And if we don't start teaching the truth, we are, it's not, capitalism is not the problem. Capitalism isn't a bad thing if it's in the hands of people who are willing to share the wealth. But when the wealth is in the hands of only a few people, they will decide who is going to share that wealth, who they're going to share that wealth with. And they decide in my country for the last 300 years on the basis of skin color. And as long as we keep on doing that, as long as we say white and black, that's how long we can keep on doing it, because we will still be convinced that we are either white or black or red or yellow. We aren't. We're all shades of brown, and we've got to break this cycle of ignorance. Racism is the result of self-imposed ignorance, and it's time for us to self-educate and stop regarding people as different members of different races. There's only one race of human beings on the face of the earth. We're all Homo sapiens. And when I say that to a bunch of boys who are doing this, or who are worried about the replacement theory, they think I called them homosexuals. I didn't. I called them Homo sapiens, and you all need to read the book. It is that ridiculous. This whole thing is that ridiculous. Think of it. We have people who actually think that their intelligence can be based on the color of their skin. This is ridiculous. We've got to get over it. We've got to put a stop to it. You need to remember that the word race, to mean a specific group of people, came out of France in 1580. And people will say to you, this has been around forever. No, it hasn't. It has been around for less than 500 years. Did you know that?
No.
And if you didn't know, why didn't you know that? For God's sake, why didn't you know that? Everybody should. And you see, we talk about education, but we aren't educating. You haven't asked me this question, but you need it. You're going to see this anyway. You see this map?
Yep.
Can you see this map? Have you seen this map before?
Yeah, that was my next question, coming to the map.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. This is a map that shows where we all came from and how we got where we are now. Here's Africa. See Africa there, and see how Africans came in two ways and populated every landmass on the face of the earth. Every human being on the face of the earth originated in Africa. Our great grandchildren, parents, grandparents originated in Africa. You and I are 30th to 50th cousins. It's time to teach students the truth. It's time to put that map, download that map from the National Geographic magazine, enlarge it, get it laminated, and hang it on the wall of every schoolroom in every school in South Africa, and every schoolroom in the United States of America, and in Europe, and all over the world. We need to start telling people only 15 to 18% of the population of the earth is classified as white, and that classification is a lie. There are no white people.
You definitely do, and I appreciate you going further than I need to. but we definitely want more. And so we're going to stay on the flag, because some melanemic people have a flag, or not a flag, a map that we're using today, where Africa, and specifically South Africa, is this small, and Europe is this big, and the US is this big. It's massive. Tell me about that, because if I understand it correctly, that is all false.
Well, it isn't the truth. And the reason it isn't the truth is because Mercator, the map you're talking about, is the Mercator projection. And Mercator was commissioned by the Pope to make a map that showed the spread of Christianity. And for that reason, the countries in the northern part of the map are larger than the countries in the southern part of the map. The equator is 2/3 of the way down the map. That's what the Mercator map is all about. What people need to do is see the Peters projection map. Look at this map. On this map, the sizes are right. You see Greenland up here, this teeny tiny little thing up here? That's the size of Greenland, in fact. This is the Peters projection map. Everybody needs to take a look at this map. And if you don't take a look at it, you've missed a really good learning experience. You can get it from ODT Maps. Many ways to see the world. The first thing we have to do is change what we teach children about the size, the shape, and the location of the land masses on the face of the earth. And if you don't do anything else, look at the Mercator map. On the bottom of the Mercator map, it says all these facts. And the last fact says South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland. That's what it says on the legend at the bottom of the map that you're referring to. South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland. People evidently don't read that sentence. So what you need to do is get a copy of this, cut this out, glue it to every map that you see. When you walk through a school or any other building and the Mercator map is there, you need to nail this to that map so that people look at that and think, oh my God, have we been misled even with our maps? Yes, we have. We have been teaching the wrong thing about the map of the world because of the Pope. 1500s. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now in my country, we have a problem with Christian nationalists, and they are going to take us back to the 1700s if we aren't very, very careful. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go back to that situation, but that's where we're going if we aren't very careful. And what happens in my country will happen in your country very shortly thereafter, because we have instant communication. And the ugly things that are being said in this country today that are not true are being repeated all over the world. People are listening to our former president and believing what he says, even though he doesn't have any more than a pea-sized brain. So you have to realize that what we're doing in the name of Christianity right now is destroying a whole lot of what we've learned. The good things we've learned are being destroyed right now by these Christian nationalists. This is a scary time. And if you haven't read the book, The Power Worshippers, get the book, The Power Worshippers, and read it this week, because it's coming to you. If you aren't careful, it will come to you. Just exactly what's happening here. Did I answer the question? Do you have another question?
Yeah. You did. You answered it perfectly. I think you touched on something that been with us in some sense all along, and Christianity was part of apartheid, like it was part of segregation, and those people that use that power indiscriminately to discriminate against um, darker skinned people were using the Bible, were using Christianity. And you saying that it seems like this far right Christian concepts is coming back to harm whatever little bit of society is left. I mean, we have it in South Africa. We've had it in South Africa, and I think whatever happens on your side, it trickles down to us so quickly, and it's polarizing. And like you say, it is very destabilizing and crazy to think that we might get back to that point where populism through Christianity becomes the next contributor to another war.
And that's exactly what's happening in this country. And if you read the book, The Power Worshippers, you'll understand how it works. You'll understand who's doing it. You'll understand why they're doing it, and you'll refuse to go along. We have to. That hey, I believe in. I'm a Christian. I believe in what Jesus taught, but Jesus did not teach the way these Christian nationalists are behaving, or the way they are absolutely determined we're all going to behave. So it is twisted Christianity, and we need to stop it.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting because I mean, we would Donald Trump believes in Christianity. Trump is
No, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait, you got the name wrong. That's Donald Trump. He's a tramp, not a Trump. If you have the Trumps in a card game, you're going to win.
Okay.
The Trumps, you aren't playing cards. You're doing a whole different thing. So you need to be aware that number one, his name wasn't Trump when his people came to this country. They changed their name, so he wasn't even a Trump. So you need to get over that. Number one. Number two, we must not allow that person to be what the United States is all about. We do not want
Yeah.
that to happen. That is not. He is not going to be the standard bearer for the United States of America, and certainly not for Christians. So now, what's your question?
No, well, he's a Christian, and the way he's been behaving, and I mean, a lot of Christians who voted for him, they have what went wrong in their minds and their understanding of Jesus in what they are living out and what we're seeing today.
The people, for the most part, who are following Donosaurus T. Rump don't know any better. Most of them are poorly educated, and most of them are looking for someone to tell them where to go and what to do. And they are looking for a family sort of situation. They want to have a group of their own, and they've chosen the wrong to lead these groupies. Eventually, they're going to realize that this is not what he is practicing. It's not Christianity. He is not behaving as a Christian, and when he holds up the Bible upside down, you know there's something very wrong with what he's doing. So you have to stop before you say Donald Trump is a Christian. Be careful, because if that's the real Christianity, then I'm not really Christian. And there are a whole lot of us who would say, wait, if that's Christianity, I'm dropping this. I'm going to join a different sect, because I will not accept that as what represents my Christianity, nor any Christianity that I have ever been aware of, except that which says, if you don't believe, do as I say. Today they'll say, do as I say, or God will damn you. Tomorrow they'll say, do as I say, or I will annihilate you. That's the kind of Christianity. That's the kind of Christianity that Donald Trump practices, and that's not my idea of Christianity.
Yeah. And I hear what you're saying, because we are unfortunately seeing it play out in front of us um, in the worst kind of way. And now I will turn your attention to what is happening in Palestine, and how a genocide of a people can happen in modern day society while we all view it and see it. And none of the world powers are willing to put enough force and enough power behind their stance to force people like Joe Biden and the US that have been funding this war, even though we see all the genocide and unspeakable things like shooting 8-year-olds and 6-year-olds in the head that has no way of harming them. How do we respond to that in this day and age?
I think number one, you have to remember what happened, what created this situation in the first place. After the Second World War, the Palestinians were forced to move off their land to make room for the Jews, because the Jewish people had been so abused during the Holocaust. So the group of the nations got together and decided that the Jews should have a home of their own, and pushed the Palestinians aside to give them that home. Now, if they had pushed the Palestinians aside and said, you are going to have your own state, you are going to have the state of Palestine, this whole thing would not be going the way it is. But Mr. Netanyahu refuses to have a two-state solution. So there are weird and ugly and unreasonable people in Palestine who are going to force that to happen. The Hamas is going to force that to happen. They aren't going to force it to happen. All that's going to happen is they're going to destroy. They've destroyed much of Palestine now, and they're going to destroy the rest of it, unless the rest of us all get together and say to the Hamas, this is not going to go on, and to the Palestinians, you're going to have a state of your own. And to the Jews, the Palestinians are going to have a state of their own. We're going to have statehood for the Palestinians if we would do that. And that's what Joe Biden is trying to accomplish. He's trying to convince Netanyahu to let the Palestinians have a state of their own. This makes good sense to me, but killing people in order to get a state of your own is not the way to do it. And killing civilians in Palestine, for the Jews to kill civilians in Palestine in order to finally try to find the members of Hamas who have started this nonsense, that's not the way to do it. There's a better way, and Joe Biden knows what it is, but he cannot force Netanyahu to do this, and he doesn't want to wreck the economy in this country by no longer making military materials. So the whole thing is a wheel within a wheel within a wheel. Joe Biden knows what he's doing. I don't like what he's doing, but he knows what he's doing. Netanyahu also knows what he's doing, and I really don't like what he's doing. The Palestinians would like to have a state of their own. They have a right to statehood. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't fully agree with that. I have to say that by the U.S. funding the war in Palestine, they are complicit in the war taking place and the killing of those people, innocent women, children that don't deserve to be killed in that way. In what we see in South Africa as genocide, and I am completely against the idea that Joe Biden specifically, because when we had apartheid, there was a moment in Joe Biden's early career as a politician where he opposed apartheid in the strongest way. And so it doesn't make sense how he is now funding a similar apartheid that is happening in Palestine. And so from that perspective, I cannot stand with that. And similarly, so to bring your attention to the protests currently happening in the US, where students all over America on various campuses have also found a strong stance against the war in Palestine and the genocide in Palestine. And the police had taken up this position of unjust violence that they have perpetuated against the students and against the staff at these universities. So that's my personal
Wait a minute.
position.
Wait. What? Wait a minute. Now let's delve into that a bit. Number
Yeah.
one, students on those campuses who are being led to protest what is happening in Palestine are right to protest what's happening in Palestine. However, they are not always being led by, and those groups are not formed, and all the people in those groups are not students. Many of them are outside agitators who come in to make this thing happen and who behave in ways that guarantee that it's going to become violent. We've had this happen in this country before. Now, if these students want to protest what's happening in Palestine, what they need to do is buy a ticket and fly to Palestine and help to clean up that mess. Imagine how quickly you could clean that mess up that has been caused by Hamas and Netanyahu working together to shatter those communities. All those students should go over there and put their hands where their mouths are and clean that mess up. They could prove that they really believe in Palestine having a state of its own, they really believe that you must not kill women and children by being there. But no, it's easier to protest than it is to go and make a difference. They'll protest because that's easy. And they'll listen to outside agitators because they want attention. I'm sorry. I know there are some people in those groups who are absolutely civic minded and doing what they think is right. But what is not right is to keep other students from learning so that you can protest and get on television. There's a better way to solve this problem, and it is not by running and protesting in the streets. We need to tell students, if I were a head of a college today, I would say to the students, if you're going to protest, you need to realize that we will return your tuition and you will go someplace else to protest. You will not do that on this campus, because this is not what we're teaching here, how to protest. In this community, we're teaching how to get it right, but not by doing wrong to get it right. Two wrongs don't make a right. So we've got to quit behaving as if we can be more powerful than you can. There's safety in numbers. There isn't safety in numbers if what your numbers are being led by is somebody who simply wants to create problems. Students need to be able to say, if they're graduating from college, they're old enough and educated enough and smart enough to say, no, I'm not going to listen to this now. I can't help the Palestinians by protesting, but I can help them by contributing to their welfare. Or I can go there and I can help them clean up that mess. I can do something other than protest. Protest is easy.
So you touching on the education system in the US. For Black people, a lot of Black people in low income communities,
Melanaceous people.
For melanaceous people in low income areas, the education that they are given versus in your more affluent areas, there's a vast difference in the quality of that education. What is wrong with that system in the US, and how do you fix that?
Everything. And well, how you fix it is, number one, you stop regarding people as black and white. You start regarding them as all people of the brown group, and all deserving good education and good schools and a proper and good nutrition and proper jobs in their future. That's how you do it, and that's possible. Barack Obama had us on our way to doing that very thing. But when Barack Obama was president, a whole bunch of pale, stale males got together and decided that he wasn't going to be successful. He tried. He couldn't be successful because the pale, stale males were absolutely opposed to what he was saying. They said he would never get reelected. He got reelected. Then they said he'll never be successful. They did everything they could to keep him from being successful and doing exactly what you're describing. He couldn't do it without the help of the members of the House of Representatives and the Senate. They were running the show. He couldn't do it. And because of the activity of those really racist men and women in the Senate and the House of Representatives, we got stuck with Donosaurus T. Rump. That would not have happened if people had not been acting in opposition, in reaction to a man of color in the White House. They don't seem to realize, and they still don't realize, that every person who has ever lived in the White House has been a person of color. We have decided that we have been stuck in the myth of race for 300 years in this country. It's time to get over it. We will not solve the problems you're talking about right now. The problem of the investment in things that are racist until we get over the idea of racism. We've got to change education in this country and all over the world to make people aware that there's only one race and we're all members of it. It's time to stop talking about race and start talking about human beings.
I hear you.
You and I are members of the family of man. And it was called the family of man until the Spanish Inquisition. We were all members of the same family. It was only after the 1500s that this whole nonsense came up. Now, we could get rid of it if we chose to. But in order to do that, we're going to have to elect people who are willing to hear the truth, to tell the truth, to live with the truth, and to force the truth down the throats of those who don't want to know it.
Ooh, you are touching on a touchy subject at the moment. We are about 24 days away from our own election here in South Africa, where we have to choose a new government. And you as well are very close to having to elect your next president. Your options are not great with the two candidates that you have on the table. Where do you see politics taking the US in terms of getting people closer to one another in this coming melee of the elections for the US?
If we elect the wrong person this in November this year, we will lose our democracy. And if we lose our democracy, then practically every democracy on the face of the earth will falter and fall because people follow what happens in the United States of America. And I know that, and you know that. It's extremely important for the health of humankind, for whether or not you like him, Joe Biden, to get elected president of the United States, because he has done good things in the last 4 years. What he did 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago is not the same as what he knows how to do today. He's a grown man. He has learned a great deal. So have we all. You cannot fault somebody for something they did 50 years ago if what they're doing today is right. And what he's doing today is right. And we know that. What Mr. Trump did 50 years ago, nobody knew about because he was a nothing then and he would be a nothing now, except for the evangelical Christians, the evangelical Christian racists, and these Christian nationalists. He could be put back where he was if we would simply do the right thing in November. The choice is between black and white. Black meaning savage and evil, and white being good and pure. That's the choice we're making right now between goodness and evil. And what we do in November is going to decide what happens in South Africa in the future, as well as in what happens in the United States of America. This is the most important election in my lifetime. And I am 90 years old, so I've seen a lot of them. This is the most important election in my lifetime. And it's important for the world, not just for this country, but for the whole world.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It is massive with regards to the impact that it would have on the world. And we all looking at it and waiting with anticipation on where that is going to go. I think one of the things that is sitting with me, it's a conversation that keeps on coming up in transformation, social justice conversations, is the issue of reparations. Um, do you think that there will be a time, especially when you look at there was over 100 million that was spent on the war in Ukraine? Do you think there's going to be a time where people realize that it's better money spent when you pay it on reparations to melanaceous people that deserve to get something back?
Which ones are you going to start with? In my country, you're talking about melanaceous people. Which melanaceous people are you going to start reparations with? Are you going to start with those who were brought here as slaves? Or are you going to start with those who owned the land before we got here, who came from Africa 15,000 years before Columbus discovered America? Our First Nations people deserve reparations and have for 300 years. We haven't given them reparations. We can't do reparations with other people until we have made it right with the people who were here when we got here. We came here, we pale faces came to this land, we stole the land, we raped their women, we killed their children, we then put them on reservations, kept their land and put them on reservations, and said, we're doing this because we love you. I believe in reparations, but I believe in reparations for those people first, and then reparations for those who came here as slaves. Because until you make reparations to the ones who were here first, who built this land, who protected this land, who loved this land, until you make reparations for them, you'd best not be making reparations for anybody else. Does that make sense to you?
I hear you. And I understand 100% what you're saying, and I see the logic behind it. I think it would probably be difficult today because it's something that needs to be done both sides, and how it goes hand in hand, we don't know. But then, and I agree with you that the First Nation needs to be acknowledged. There need to be repairs in terms of reparations and the redistribution of their land. And would you agree then that the money that was spent on these wars could have been more beneficial in starting that process?
But you need to realize that we didn't start what's going on in Ukraine. We aren't the ones. The United States isn't the one. We aren't the ones who are supporting that, who started that war. The Soviet Union, after the Second World War, wanted to return. They want to go back to being the USSR, and they are going to return to that if they possibly can. And if that means that Russia is going to invade every one of those countries that were part of the USSR in order to put them under the blanket of the USSR again, then we're going to have to fight that battle every time it comes up. And it is going to come up until the people find another ruler in Russia. As long as Putin is there, this kind of thing is going to happen, and we're going to have to spend money to defend the countries that he wants to overtake again. We've been through this before. See, I've heard it all before, and it's happening all again, because those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. We are forgetting the mistakes of the past, and we're allowing the same things to happen now as happened in 1933, the year I was born. We allowed Germany. I remember reading books about President Roosevelt, and at some point somebody said to him, "What are you going to do about Adolf Hitler?" And he said, "Leave that man alone. He's taking care of a problem the rest of us don't want to deal with." That was said by the President of the United States about Adolf Hitler. Now, that's a mistake in the past. We need to remember that. We need to remember that the Second World War need never have happened if it hadn't been for the fact that the whole world was in a depression at that time. And the only way this country could get out of the depression was to start a war. And the only way we could start a war was to start building war materials. And that would put everybody back to work, and that would solve our depression. And that's exactly what Roosevelt did. He got us out of the depression by going to war. And we will do it again if we have to. And you'll do it again, and Russia will do it again. They'll try to take back all those countries that were part of the USSR if somebody doesn't put a stop to it. You know that, and I know that. It has to be stopped. But you can't stop it by talking it to death. You can't talk him into behaving like a civilized human being, because he is going to do what he wants to do, and the rest of us are going to pay huge amounts of money to people who are making arms in order to put a stop to something that should never have happened. You can't change history, but at least you can learn from it. And we aren't learning from it.
We are definitely not learning from it.
And we're banning books. We're banning books in this country that would teach children about the past, because these book banners are saying, you people who want to talk about the past are trying to make our white children feel guilty. This has nothing to do with making white children feel guilty. It has to do with teaching children about the rights and respect for the rights of others, and the fact you have to be held responsible if you don't respect the rights of others. It's time for us to start teaching the 3 R's of rights, respect, and responsibility in the schools, because we haven't done a good job with reading, writing, and arithmetic. So we'd better start working on rights, respect, and responsibility. We'd better respect the rights of all people, and we ought to be held responsible if we don't respect them. And that's exactly what is happening in Ukraine right now. Russia does not respect the rights of Ukrainians to have their own country and run their own way. They don't respect that right. So somebody has to teach them that they have to. We're having to educate Mr. Putin and company. We shouldn't have to do that, but somebody's going to have to.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the important aspects of war that has been used in public debate and on many platforms is something where people are highlighting that over the last 25 to 30 years, there was only 8 years of that period where the US were not busy with a war against somebody somewhere, and so the US is viewed as this war mongering country. with that in mind, right, I want to know from you, because the US was one of the leading forces with the UK, where a lot of the countries like mine were advised to release our weapons of mass destruction. Um, uh, and now, today, the only people that have the capability to annihilate nations are the US, the UK, countries like Russia and China. I am of the opinion, I'm happy that Russia and China has that capacity, because if they didn't have that capacity, the US can bomb any of us at any time without having a care in the world, because it would be that easy, because we don't have the means to fight back. And so maybe if we
I,
are honest about the world, no significant changes ever happened with talking and dialogue. It has often and more often than not come to war.
I think you need to take another look at how the US gets into war. For the most part, we react to ugly things that are happening to people in other countries. And what was happening in Germany and in Europe during the Hitler years was absolutely insane. We didn't have the power to do anything about it, and then we got the power to do it, to put a stop to it. We put a stop to it. We don't have to have the United States doesn't start wars. The United States gets engaged in wars when he has to put a stop to some really ugly stuff that's happening. And that's unfortunate, but we do that. And there are a number of countries that would say now, to this day, if it hadn't been for the United States stepping in, things would be much worse than they are. And things could be much worse than they are in the future if we don't step in and stop what's happening in Ukraine. Those people in Ukraine have a right to have their statehood too, have a right not to be part of the Soviet Union. They have that right. And if there's only if it's going to take the help of the international community to guarantee them that right, then the international community is going to have to do that. And it's going to keep on happening as long as Putin is running Russia.
Yeah, I think you have covered a lot in terms of your views in terms of war and also the US. You've mentioned that the US is obviously a country that gives the almost the it's the main focus point on how the world moves forward in a lot of sense, and how we do business and things like that. um, how do you think in the future, depending on, especially on that election, if
Oh,
we don't get if we don't get the outcome which you spoke about earlier, which in your mind is Biden is the best option and the only one moving forward. If we don't see that happening, what awaits the world with the other option available?
I can't, I can't, I don't want to, and I won't imagine what will happen if Dinosaur T. gets elected to the presidency again, because that is unspeakable and unthinkable about what could happen if he became the president and his followers, who are in many cases thugs, the world is going to be in big trouble. I honestly believe that. I think that the United States has been instrumental in trying to create a peaceful world and trying to create peace instead of creating war. We've reacted to wars and with strength and with determination. And many people have gotten freed because of what the United States has done to fight wars that were not ours, but we fought them anyway. This time, this war, we have a war going on within the United States right now. The war within the United States is decency against ugliness. That's the war we're fighting in this country. And if we lose that war and ugliness prevails, then that will be going on all over the world. Make no mistake about that. This is what is happening in this country today is going to determine the fate of many countries in the future. This is not just a U.S. problem. The United States hasn't just been concerned with its own problems over the last 70 years of my life. It has helped many countries accomplish many good things. We could continue to do that if we present to the world a picture of a nation that will not allow a thug to become our leader. We cannot have this thug. When he talks about having a mugshot, that's not a mugshot, that's a thug shot. Make no mistake about that. And we cannot have that thug running this country for another 4 years. People all over the world need to be aware that Joe Biden is trying to fix up, repair what that thug, and we must not allow him to go ahead and destroy more. We can't have that.
Yeah. We hear you and I hear you. I think it is quite clear and quite evident that it's going to get interesting for all of us as time progresses to all these elections coming up. And we can only hope and pray that there is some hope left at the end of all of that.
But no, you can't. No. That's not true. You cannot only hope and pray. You can decide not to let this go on in your presence. When statements are made that are in favor of the United States of America, you can say it's not going to happen to there, and we're not going to let it happen here. You can refuse to go along to get along, and that's what we do. We just sit back and say, well, this is somebody else's problem. No, this isn't the problem just in the United States. This is the problem of the whole world. We all have to get together and see to it that what is happening in this country is stopped where Donald Trump is concerned, and that it doesn't happen in your country and in every other country in the world. We have to have a country on this earth that will stand up, and whose members will stand up and say, we know this is wrong and we're going to put a stop to it. That's what we have to do. That's the way to solve the problem of Trump, and that's the way to solve the problem of racism.
So as a diamond member of the anti-racism movement in the world, Jane Elliott has been around for a long time and have seen a lot of things. And so if Jane Elliott tonight has to leave the world with what her idea is of, after seeing everything and going through all these things and being blessed to live for 90 years, what is the wisdom that you will impart to the world right now on how do we attempt to end racism in the world?
You decide that it's a lie. You refuse to go along with the lie. You would say, no, people don't come in black and white and red and yellow. They come in shades of brown. We're all members of the family of man, and this mess started in the 1500s, and we're going to stop it in the year 2024. We are to this day going to say no more racism in my country. We are not going to treat people positively or negatively on the basis of our ignorance about skin color. Racism is a result of self-imposed ignorance. And if your teachers haven't taught you about the truth about the past and about the truth about the races, then you're going to have to educate yourselves. Go to my website, download the printed learning materials on that website. The first is a set of typical statements that melanaceous people make that think they aren't racist. Read through those statements, then read through the clarifications of them, and then you'll hear what people hear when you make these stupid statements like, when I see you, I don't see you black. My God, I've had that. I'll never forget the woman who diddled up to me, and diddle me's run on little short steps, came up to me, and a melanatic woman who was standing beside me, and she said to this woman, Linda, I know you so well, I don't see you as black anymore. And I sat back, I thought, there's going to be bloodshed here, I've got to wear this suit tomorrow. And Linda Guillory looked down at that fool and said, I think we need to make an appointment with the optometrist. You obviously have an eye problem. That woman diddled away from her faster than she had diddled up to her, and I'll bet she never says that again. It's time for us to not tolerate remarks like, when I see you, I don't see you black. You want not to see you want not to have a black eye. Do not make that statement again. Stop acting as though the things you learned in school were real. There is only one race. When we get ready to decide that we're all members of the same race, there's only one color group, and that's the brown color group. When somebody makes a racist remark, instead of you saying to yourself, well, I don't believe that, everybody knows I don't believe that way, step up and say, what you just said is a racist remark. Race is a lie, and it's time for you to understand that I will not tolerate those remarks being made in my presence. Now, everybody in the group is going to be upset by you, because they will go along with that racist remark, because we're all ignorant. When they hear somebody stand up and say, not in my presence, you're not going to make that remark in my presence. You're not going to tell that racist joke. It's not going to happen here. So if you want to do that, you'll have to go someplace else to do it. And I'm not going to move away. So what are you going to do now? If you want to stop racism, you have to stop it every time it happens in your presence. You are just one person, but one person could make a difference. Go through the typical statements, the clarification of the typical statements, and then read the commitments to combat racism. There's a set of things that you can do. Just a minute here, because I just happen to have a set of these. I don't know how this happened, but I just happen to have it here. Have I ended my affiliation with organizations which are racist, sexist, or ageist in their membership requirements? That's something you can do. Have I subscribed to a publication which will educate me in the area of a culture other than my own? Have I left copies of that publication inside where my friends and associates might see it and question my interest in it? Have I made an effort to learn some of the language of those in my community who may speak something other than standard South African? Have I realized that white Americans are trapped by their own schools, homes, media, government, families, and so forth when they choose not to be openly racist or sexist? If you choose to refuse to go along with racism and sexism, you will lose some of your friends. But those are the kind of friends that you shouldn't have wanted for friends anyway. Have I become seriously dissatisfied with my own level of activity in combating racism, sexism, and ageism? If the answers to any of those are no, then you have to change the way you behave. Racism is a personal problem. It is an individual problem. It takes individuals to stop being racist, and we could if we chose to. If you want, however, to keep your friends and associates and your family members, keep on going along to get along, and you will never cure the problem of racism. All it takes is for people to go along. You cure it by refusing to go along. You'll lose. I've lost my family. My mother kicked me out of the family after my dad died because of the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. I didn't see any of my brothers or sisters for 15 years because they weren't supposed to come near me because of the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. So did I cower and cringe and stop doing that work? Absolutely not. And I won't stop doing that work as long as there's one person who uses the word white to describe people who look like me and uses the word black to describe people who look like you. Because you ain't black and I ain't white. And it's time for us to get rid of those two words when you're describing people. And I know that you're thinking, how am I going to get along with people in South Africa if I start using words like melanemic and melanaceous and melanotic? Well, then come up with another word. Just here's something you can do. I know you want to do this. Get the Pantone color wheel. The Pantone skin color wheel. Have you seen this little item?
No.
On this item, all of these are the colors, shades of brown that people are. These are human skin colors. Get a copy of this, the Pantone skin color wheel. Put it someplace where people can put their palm on, and then find their skin color on one of these pieces. And you will find them. They are there. And then go to the thesaurus and look up all the synonyms for brown. There are about 100 synonyms for brown. Find one that you think matches your skin color. Then go to the dictionary, find that word in the dictionary, and it'll tell you what your skin color is. Then use that for your skin color in the future. A couple of women called me several years ago and said, Mrs. Elliott, and I don't know, have I said this anyway? I'm going to do it anyway. And said, we're from now on, when I have to fill in a form, ask for my race, I'm going to put human. I said, what are you going to put if it says skin color? One of them said, I'm going to put mocha. The other one said, I'm going to put chocolate. Now, I think I told you that before, but if I didn't tell you that before, it bears repeating. Your skin isn't black and mine isn't white. You're closer to mocha than you are to chocolate. And I'm closer to mocha than I am to white. So we can change. The first thing you have to do if you want to change people's minds is change the language. Words are the most powerful weapon devised by humankind. We use words to destroy people all day, every day. We also use words to make people grow. Words are what make us do the things we do, say the things we say, and think the things we think. So we need to change our vocabulary. And the first thing we need to change about our vocabulary is take out white and black for skin color and start using tones of shades of brown. Does that make sense to you?
Makes
Now
sense
you're thinking that isn't enough. But that isn't enough. There are a lot more things. Yeah, there are a lot more, but wait a minute. Before you were born, you were an egg. It took 12 months for you to develop into a person. A word can make a difference. A word today can change the world tomorrow. There's not a doubt in my mind that words can make the difference and have. People are reacting to words, and they're reacting to what they see on television. And I remember when Marshall McLuhan in the 60s said, keep your kids away from television. It will ruin their minds. And I got up this morning and thought, oh my God, Marshall McLuhan was so right. Why haven't we paid attention to what he was saying? Because now, because of artificial intelligence, we are now going to realize how very right Marshall McLuhan was. And we better start getting kids back into books and taking them off the screen. We've got a whole mess of people on this earth who are now screen addicted. If it didn't happen on television, it didn't happen. If they see it on television, it's right. It's real. We've got to train children to think instead of reacting to what they see on television. Go right ahead and I'll interrupt you with something else. But go to my website and download those printed materials and then download the bibliography and read every book on that bibliography. Read every book that's listed, particularly under racism, because the idea of racism is the result of self-imposed ignorance. As long as you don't know any better, you'll keep on doing it. When you finally learn better, then you'll put a stop to it. You'll get uncomfortable.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Jane Elliott. Miss Elliott, thank you for your time. Thank you for speaking to us. Thank you for always being willing to take up the cause and to say it as it is and to not back down. We appreciate you. We appreciate your work and we appreciate your time tonight. And may only good things await you in the rest of what is left of your life. And we are so blessed and glad that we could have a moment with you.
So are you going to buy a Peters projection map?
I definitely will. All the resources will be bought.
Right. Don't tell me you're grateful until I see that map being sold. All right.
Well done.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Definitely
Okay.
will. Thank you very much. Everybody, that was The Untold Truth with Jane Elliott. We'll see you again next time. Take care.